Hello everybody, happy Saturday and welcome to Merrifield's Gardening Advisor. David and I are so glad you could spend a little part of your weekend with us. And a beautiful weekend it's going to be, isn't it?
Yeah, and when we had that big storm come through, I thought, oh, it's nice because I know we're going to get this fresh, clean air coming behind it.
Yesterday was spectacular.
Exactly. I feel like I'm in Michigan, you know, blue skies, white clouds, cool temperatures.
Absolutely.
It's great.
Well, it's a great weekend to get out and enjoy your garden. So today we're going to help you because we've got some earth-friendly, I'd say, tips for you today.
Yes, you know, the last few weeks we've talked about the beneficial role of insects in the garden, but today we're going to talk about some of the garden pests that we run into, both in terms of insects, disease, weeds. So this is why I say kind of the ugly side of gardening. But what we're really going to emphasize is natural control options that are available to you. So these are just kind of little nuisance things that can pop up in any garden, and like I said, we'll show how you can manage those without having to resort to any kind of real toxic chemicals. So it should be interesting stuff. We've also mixed in a few flowers and stuff to keep it an enjoyable, pretty part of gardening in there as well.
And then later on in the show, we will take your phone calls as well, so stay tuned for that. Well, before we begin, just a quick announcement. You know, it's a very special day tomorrow. Tomorrow is Father's Day, so happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. So we at Merrifield Garden Center tomorrow, we're going to be open. We're going to close a little early, just an hour early. We'll be open from 9 to 5 instead of our normal 9 to 6, just so our dads can go spend a little bit more time with their kids. And we've got some great ideas for Father's Day presents because, you know, what do you get, Dad? That's I struggle with that all the time. What's a perfect gift for
Well,
Dad?
I've got an idea for you.
What's that?
Debbie?
Okay.
And there's still time to do this.
Good,
right.
good.
You know, I was thinking hydrangeas are traditionally a Mother's Day plant. You know, when you're talking about Mother's Day, you think hydrangeas. But I started realizing, well, why is that? You know, the hydrangeas really don't start flowering until we get almost into June, this time of year. So I'm kind of trying to change our thinking a little bit and actually have us look at these as Father's Day plants.
Perfect.
So the one that we're looking at to start out with there are the white flowers, and I brought 4 different ones in here to show you today. But in the background, the ones with the white flowers, that's a type of hydrangea. It's called smooth hydrangea. It's actually a native plant in our environment. This particular one, though, has these really large white blossoms, and they start out almost that chartreusey green, and then they open and mature to a white. And this particular one is called Annabelle because it was sort of found or discovered in Annabelle, Illinois. By some ladies who were out horseback riding and named it after their hometown. So this is probably the easiest, most reliable of all the hydrangeas that you could possibly grow. It's kind of interesting in that this is one that flowers get so big that sometimes it starts to pull the plants over and kind of starts to flop down.
Right.
So it responds quite well to pruning, and you can prune Annabelle pretty aggressively. So a lot of times in the winter, people will go in and they'll cut that back either real aggressively or do what we call selective thinning. That keeps the plant compact and bushy, and it doesn't flop over as much. Now, Annabelle is pretty much exclusively in a white. They've come out with a couple new varieties that have a slight tinge of pink to it, but really think of it more as a white.
Okay.
So that's one idea, and they're, of course, starting to bloom right now. Perfect for Father's Day. Now, this is the one that people are probably most familiar with. This was called a big leaf hydrangea or hydrangea macrophylla. This is kind of interesting in that you can get different colors in the flowers based on the soil chemistry. So you see it there as a blue, but this could also be turned into a pink, if that's what you want to do. Now, these hydrangeas traditionally would come out and they would flower, you know, kind of late June, July time period, and just kind of have that single blossom period. But several years ago, they came out with a series called Endless Summer, which is a repeat bloomer. So what you would do with this is it starts blooming now. You get a nice set of flowers in this late June, continuing into July time period. Then you can go in afterwards and deadhead it, kind of cut back the spent blooms, and it will reflower before the end of the season. So that's been a real big popular plant, hugely popular because of the repeat flowering in there. Now, pretty much both of these hydrangeas, what they really want is be in a cool, moist environment, let's say kind of morning sun, afternoon shade. If you put it out in a hot and dry location, it's going to suffer.
Right.
Pretty much. But those are a couple, and I brought a couple more into show, because there's actually, when we talk about hydrangeas, it's a pretty big group. This is also a member of that Endless Summer series, in that it's a repeat bloomer. It's Hydrangea macrophylla, the same species as what that blue plant was, but this one has what's called a lace cap type of bloom. This is a variety, it's called Twist and Shout, so it gets the same care, the same culture as the blue one, but this really gives you a different flower form. Now these plants, they'll get quite large. They can grow to be 4, even 6 feet tall and wide, but that's something, again, that's easily managed with pruning. And as we back out there, you're going to see this monstrous hydrangea that I brought in.
We had a fun time getting it in here too, I tell you.
Yeah, but it's such a beauty, I had to bring it in. And that's going to be the oak leaf. If we can lift the camera just a little bit,
you see some of the blooms.
You start to see that leaf in the background, that actually the leaf on this looks like an oak tree. That's where its name comes from. This is Hydrangea quercifolia, because the leaf is looks like an oak. It's blooming now. They're flowering, and you can start to see it's opening up. Again, these are going to be white in their flower color. They don't adjust to the shift in soil chemistry or anything, so they're going to be white. As it matures, you might start to get a little bit of a pinkish coloration in there. But what's so great with this oak leaf hydrangea, of course, is you get the blooms, but the leaf is beautiful, and then you also have spectacular fall color in there. With the oak leaf hydrangea, I really don't like to do any pruning, any more than you have to. But if it gets to the point where you feel like you need to prune, then you go in there and just do a little bit of selective thinning right after it's done flowering, so you don't disrupt its bloom the next year.
So plants are a perfect gift for Dad, and shade trees. Imagine sitting out under a nice shade tree, in your hammock, and it's just great ideas for Dad.
Yeah, who's got time for that? But on Father's Day, right? That's when you take time for it.
Well, picked up a couple of things in the garden center too while I was heading out as ideas, and hats. Now my husband is big on hats because they're so protective. And I think we should just put this on here and see how this looks.
Oh, I kind of like that look.
There you go. There you go. That's great.
I don't know.
That's a good look on you.
That may not be quite my style, Debbie.
But there's several varieties. I picked up one. There's kind of a meshy one, and just all kinds of styles. But a couple other ideas. Whoops, let me put this over here. We've got squirrel-proof bird feeders, if you're into feeding the birds, which is great.
Yeah, this is one of my favorites right there. These squirrel busters are really, really good feeders. Very sturdy, well built, and like I said, this squirrel resistant. This mini one is nice though, because a lot of times if you don't want to invest in a real big full-size feeder, this would be a perfect gift.
Yeah, and then some fun things, wickles. Everybody loves. If you're into pickles, these are saucy little pickles, the wickles.
Yeah, and I had a customer in the other day who was talking about how great the was it hot pepper peach jelly is or something.
Oh wow! Yeah.
So now I'm thinking I gotta go get some of that and try it out.
We'll pull these over. Some peanuts. We've got all kinds of fun things at the garden center. And can you hold those pruners up, because the Felco pruners is probably one of the nicest gifts that you can give, because if you're a gardener, they're a must-have.
Exactly. So hydrangeas, bird feeders, goodies, tools. We got everything.
It all. So stop by. See us again. We're open till 5 tomorrow. We're open till 8 tonight, but stop by and pick up something great for Dad. We're going to take a quick break and come back with some green ideas for you. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everybody. Well, we took a look at some beautiful plants, some beautiful hydrangeas, but now we're going to take a look at something that's not so pretty.
Yes, as we start getting later into the gardening season, the temperatures begin to warm up a little bit. That's when we do start to see some pest problems occur. And as we've talked about, a healthy garden's going to have insects.
Right.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Happens.
That's actually a good thing. But there are also times when these insects become a pest, when they start to cause too much damage and things get a little bit out of balance and we feel like it's time to intervene. Now this is probably the #1 sample that we're getting at the plant clinic right now. And I should mention that anything that we do with pest control in our garden, bring us samples. A lot of people bring pictures, which is fantastic, but if you can bring both a picture and a sample, that's what we really like to see.
Because you can look at it under the microscope and really see what's under there.
Yeah, and that's what we're there to do. That's our job, is there to help you. So please bring it in so we can get things identified correctly. Now, like I said, every single day, Debbie, we're probably getting 5, 6 samples of that rose slug. The rose slug, if we can go back one, the rose slug, we need to go a little further.
There you go.
Yeah, back to the beginning there, right? The rose slug, it's hard to see. It's so well camouflaged, but I turned the leaf over, and on the back side of the leaf, you can see it, that little worm. That's at maturity, and it's only about 1/2 an inch long. But what they'll do is when they're small, they start out tiny, and they start chewing these holes in the leaves. As they grow and get bigger, of course, their holes get bigger, and then they gradually just demolish your plant. And a lot of times you never actually see the insect that's doing it. Now, the thing is, it's interesting, we actually encounter about 3 different species of this rose slug. There's what's called a European rose slug that kind of chews on the top surface of the leaf. What you're looking at there is called a bristly rose slug. Then there's also what's called a curled rose slug, and they come out in different seasons or different times of the year. So just as you're out there in the garden and you're monitoring, you're watching, if you start to see this damage, then you intervene and control. Now, like I said, I understand a lot of people just don't want to be using any kind of synthetic chemicals to use as pesticides in their garden. And that's fine, because the good news is that the natural and organic controls have really progressed over the years. When I'm looking at making control recommendations for me, #1, I want it to be effective.
Right.
I think a lot of times when we're in the realm of organics, the old days we were recommending things that didn't work so well, and that kind of turned people off. So it needs to be effective. I also think it needs to be convenient and easy to use. That's in there, and we've kind of made that progress. And then, of course, we're always going to look at the lowest toxicity.
Right. So what you were just looking at was Captain Jack's dead bug.
Right. Appropriately
quite a title there, Captain Jack's dead bug.
Yeah, this is a microbial insecticide. They found that growing in the soil from a bacteria that was in the soil around the old rum distilleries. And there's a piece of ground there where nothing would grow, nothing would live, and all the insects were avoiding it, and so they extracted and developed out of that. So this is developed out of a naturally occurring soil inhabiting microbe, and that's a really good option for controlling that rose slug.
Right.
It also works on sawflies, it works on caterpillars, thrips, a wide range of pests you can use on trees, shrubs, flowers, fruits, and vegetables. So if you're running into that rose slug and you don't want to do the traditional insecticides, that's a good option.
And the other thing I love is it's Captain Jack's dead bug brew.
Yeah.
So,
recognizing his heritage at the brewery. Great. Now, some other pests that you need to be looking for right now. I want to talk a little bit about scale insects, if we can bring those pictures up. Scale are insects that basically they suck the sap out of the plant. They stick their mouth in there, they suck sap out of the plant, they excrete this honeydew, and then you start to see this black sooty mold growing on the plant. So a lot of times the very first indication that you have a scale infestation is when you see this black moldy growth occurring on the plant. So if you see this black mold, which is not really that harmful, but if you see this, then you need to go in, take a closer look, and if you turn that leaf over, we'll advance to our next picture, there's a good chance that you'll start to find scale insects. Now this is called the cottony camellia scale, but you're going to find this on holly, you're going to find it on yews, and you're going to find it on camellias. And what you're looking at right there, those little puffy white blobs on there, those are eggs. These eggs, each one might have 100 or 200 eggs, and the important thing to know is those eggs just started hatching out this past week. So timing of treatment is really critical with these. The other that just hatched out this week is the Lacanium scale. That one has a harder shell on the outside, and we're seeing quite a bit of Lacanium scale right now. But the thing is, they just hatched, and so if you're running into these pests, you want to treat them right now. They're at a very vulnerable point in their life cycle, and really anything will control them. So the nice thing is we can use things like insecticidal soap, horticultural oil, pyrethrin. Essentially, you go in right now and anything will work. It's really the timing that's so critical, which brings you back to the importance of getting a good diagnosis on there.
Absolutely.
So again, these are natural products. You know, you can use them on trees, shrubs, even use on herbs and vegetables.
Okay.
And then I've got a couple more I'm going to go through quickly because I realize I'm just brought too much stuff and never enough time.
We always do.
But aphids, these are just some of the insect pests that we're running into right now. So while you're out there spending time in the garden, look around. Now this is clearly magnified. In real life, they're going to be pretty small, but aphids are actually born pregnant. So you've got the adult aphid, and she gives birth to live young, and so you can go from like 1 or 2 aphids into 100 or 200 aphids pretty quickly. Now the good thing is, of course, aphids are easy to control. They've got a lot of natural predators out there, anywhere from little wasps that we've talked about to things like ladybugs. So we'll take a look at the ladybug, which most of you should be familiar with. If we just go through our next couple pictures. So that's the adult ladybug, and she forages around and eats and feeds on the aphids, so that's a natural predator. But when they're in their larval stage, they look quite different. So this is, I want you to get familiar with what the larvae looks like, because on occasion you'll find these in your garden and people don't know what they are, don't recognize them, and start to destroy it. So that's the larvae, which also feeds on the aphids. So again, if you're using biological controls and you have aphids in your garden, whether it's tomatoes or roses or anything like that, we also sell ladybugs, and that's an option. You could come in and purchase ladybugs and release them in your garden.
We've actually got on set here a little container that has the live ladybugs in them here, if you can see this. They're all running around in there.
300 of them in there, Debbie.
Is it really? Wow.
Yeah, you start counting now, and then by the time we're back from commercial, you'll have it all worked out, right?
And you got one more?
Okay, if we have time, I'll put this up super quick, because right now, of course, we know how wet it's been with all the rain and with some of the warmer temperatures coming out. Slugs are out there in pretty much of abundance. If you're seeing these kind of irregular shaped holes chewed into your hosta, chewed into marigold, chewed into basil, lettuce, there's a pretty good chance you're dealing with slugs. And again, this sluggo is my favorite control. It's super easy. It's a bait that you put out. It's little chunks of macaroni that's about the size of a grain of rice. You sprinkle this in the ground throughout the garden, the slugs come out, they eat the macaroni, and it's got iron phosphide in there. The iron phosphide is a natural product that's toxic to slugs and snails, but harmless to people and pets.
Great. Okay, we're going to take a quick break and come back with some more natural remedies for those garden pests. We've got another insect to take a look at.
Yeah, and these are things that you really could be looking for in your garden right now. I'm going through some of the most common pests that we've been seeing at the plant clinic. So things like that rose slug, the scale, the timing is so important. You know, the aphids are out right now, slugs are out right now. But this next one is a pest to be on the lookout for.
Yes.
Right. I have not actually encountered these yet. We haven't received any samples of it, but bagworms generally do emerge as we get into this kind of June, July time period. And the thing is, it's a caterpillar, and it feeds primarily on evergreens, so it's got a wide host range. But as it's feeding, it takes the needles, it takes the foliage from the plant, and it weaves it into this little protective cocoon. So they're extremely well camouflaged. And we really want to catch it early in the game before the damage occurs.
Right.
Because as you can see, they can go in and almost completely defoliate the tree pretty quickly in there. So the thing is, we want to monitor, we want to look and be able to get on that right away. Again, if you were to run into this, my preferred treatment, and there's different options, would be the Captain Jack's. The Captain Jack's, it contains an active ingredient called spinosad, and you hear me referring to it a lot of times. In the past, a lot of you may know Thuricide or BT, and that's what we used.
Right.
My thing is BT, which is an excellent product, but the bacteria in that, basically they get killed off in the sunlight from the ultraviolet light.
Right.
So with the BT, you only get about 1 day's effective results with it. With the Captain Jacks, it will give you about up to maybe a 5-day residual
that's
effect.
much better, yeah.
So I feel like we get a little better results with this, a little broader spectrum of control. It's been around for a few years, but an excellent option out there.
Okay.
Now, switching over a little bit to diseases, because everybody knows it's been, pretty damp this year.
Right.
But it's really been cool temperatures. And what we found is just fairly recently, as it started to warm up a little bit, when it gets warm and it gets moist, that's when all these kind of different molds and fungi and stuff starts showing up all over the place. This is a pretty disgusting picture.
Yes.
I think maybe I've seen enough of it.
Okay, yeah,
you got the idea. But this is a fungal infection. It's called Exobasidium leaf gall.
Mm-hmm.
We see that in azaleas, and we also find it in camellias. Like I say, it's a fungal infection. It gets in there, and it causes these big kind of apple green, weird-looking growths on there. Then it starts to get that white, grayish mold on the outside. And by the time it gets to that point, it's releasing spores that go back to reinfect other parts of the plant. So we'd love to catch it before that.
Right.
Right. Now with that, there's really nothing we can do as far as sprays go. That's something that we just go in and simply pinch it off. You go through there with some scissors or your fingers and just cut off the infected leaves and throw them out. So we're talking about our natural controls and least toxic options that are out there. A lot of times, many times, probably our most #1 recommendation is just to prune it out.
Right.
So when we're dealing with these pest problems, a lot of it is just simply take your pruners or your scissors, and if you're out there and you're diligent and you see diseased parts of the tree or the plant, and you just simply cut that off, put it in a trash bag and remove it. Just sanitation is always a good option. So we're not
with the bagworms.
Yeah, exactly. We're not always talking about spraying and things like that. So
how more natural can you get?
Right.
Didn't take them off.
But that can get to be a little overwhelming also.
Right.
Now we've just starting to get our first samples of mildew in. Mildew is when temperatures are hovering about 75 to 85 degrees and humidity kicks up to 70% or more. We're kind of in that cycle now, and you'll see mildew just kind of has that grayish white moldy look on the growth. So it's out there now. If you see it and you encounter it, again, you've got a ton of different options as far as control goes. I'm just putting all these products out to kind of give you an idea of the different choices that are available to you now. This fungicide here is called Serenade. Serenade, again, it's a biological control. It's a type of bacteria that actually compete against and helps to suppress the plant pathogens. It was derived from the same bacteria that causes fire blight, oddly enough, but it tends to cause the plant to go into overdrive as far as its defense systems go to the plant. So I've used Serenade, and it's given me some pretty good results with mildew. Again, these products don't always work on the same disease. When it first came out, I was playing around with it. I was trying to, for example, late blight on my tomatoes. It didn't seem to work, but with mildew, it gave me some pretty good results there. Okay, so that's one. Do we want to keep going or take a break?
Let's take a quick break, and we'll come back and finish up on these.
Because we got plenty of different diseases and weeds to talk about. You know that.
We'll be right back. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We're talking about pests. I know it's not a fun subject, but it's an important subject. I know,
hey,
David.
It's not fun.
I was going to say.
Just because I spent like the last 20 years doing this?
It's a very important subject that David is well versed in.
Yeah, and I know we're going through a lot of different products and everything, so I wanted to remind everybody we do get our show outlines and copies of the show up on our website at MerrifieldGardenCenter.com.
Usually that's up by, we're doing the show, and usually by Saturday afternoon. It's up at the very latest a couple days into the week. But
so I like to because
see the show if you missed it today.
What did he say? What did we say? You just go back there and look it up. Let's continue though, and I'm gonna have to pick up the pace here because I brought too many diseases along with me today.
Yeah, you got some pretty stuff to show us at the end of this too.
So this is on cucumber. Again, we're starting to see that because I wanted to make sure we got a little bit about vegetables going on in there. This is called angular leaf spot. Again, it's a fungal infection that can get pretty bad, and it can start to cause the plant to defoliate. Of course, with less foliage on there, less photosynthesis, the plant loses productivity. You can even start to see some burn and stuff occurring on the leaves. So it's a fungal leaf spot. This other one is we're looking at is a fungal leaf spot that you'll see sometimes in your perennial bed. Coming up, this is Septoria leaf spot showing up in Rudbeckia, or the black-eyed Susan that's in there. And I put a little inset there to give it close-up where you get these sometimes kind of angular-looking shapes in there, that just sort of purplish-black kind of discoloration in the leaf. Again, these things don't kill plants, so to a certain amount, if you're able to tolerate it and accept it, you know, then that's one option you have. But it can get pretty bad to where your black-eyed Susans or your cucumbers are really looking rough and struggling. So if it gets to that situation and you feel like you want to intervene, again, copper is a natural fungicide that you could use. Copper's been in use for literally hundreds of years. It works on both a range of fungal and bacterial infections and leaf spots. So a lot of times when we're dealing with problems in the vegetable garden, whether it's tomatoes, peppers, you know, the cucumbers, but also in the flower bed, you know, this is a good option that's available to you. So it's a natural product, but it does wash off following heavy rain, so then you need to go back and reapply it. I also want to emphasize this is true with all fungicides, not just the natural ones, but all the fungicides. These things are used to protect the plant from infection. It's a preventative treatment. There's no such thing as a total cure. They just need to be put on there early in the game to stop the spread of the disease.
Right.
Switching quickly to lawns, because I just, again, want to sort of touch on all bases. This has been a fantastic season for lawns. We grow cool season grasses, and they've been loving this cool, moist weather that we have. But now that we've got the temperatures warming up, when we start getting into that sort of 80 to 90 degree temperature range, starts to put a little bit of stress on the plants. That's when we start to run into these disease problems like brown patch. So we're into that weather forecast now, you know, where every day, you know, if you start looking ahead into Sunday and Monday, and they're talking about 50% chance of rain, temperatures in the 80s, that's when brown patch is going to start to show up. Now, as Actinovate is a relatively new product, I haven't really had the chance to try it out myself, though I've heard very good things about it. This is a biological control. This is a mix of different types of bacteria. You mix it with water and then spray it or drench it into the soil. And these fungi actually can colonize the leaf or the roots of the plant, and they help to outcompete the plant pathogens. They also produce antibodies that try to kill off and fend off some of the pathogens that occur in the soil. So it's kind of using, you know, good bacteria against.
So if you try this, let us know how well it does.
Absolutely. So I'm going to finish up now real quick with weeds.
Okay.
Because we're talking about insects,
Fun.
disease, weeds. Well, corn gluten, again, that's been around for almost 20 years. The corn gluten meal is a organic food grade material that works both as a natural fertilizer and weed preventer. So this is one that really does need to be applied before those weeds start showing up. So this is one that we can use against annual weeds. So let's see our next picture. I want to show this stilt grass. The Japanese stilt grass, which is a widespread problem that's out there, if it's an annual, so each year it dies and then each year it comes back from seed. So if we had been proactive in putting down the corn gluten, that could have been done as a preventer. But where it's showing up now, some of these organic weed killers, we could use something like this burnout, which is a total vegetation killer. The problem, I might say the problem with burnout is that it doesn't selectively kill one weed versus another. Essentially, wherever you spray it, it kills it.
Right.
And on annual weeds, this does a good job. It kills them very fast, but then it doesn't really migrate down the roots. So on perennial weeds, they might start to come back. So weed control is difficult, especially if we're growing with naturals, but I want to let you know that we do have some organic options. One other that I want to show real quick, I've got a picture of dandelions, but most of you probably know what dandelions look like. But I was glad to see from Whitney Farms, they're the first people that really introduced a selective weed killer. This could be used in your lawn. It does not damage your grass. So you could spray this, for example, to kill dandelions without harming your turf, and it's completely natural, you know, pet-friendly, kid-friendly.
Right.
So
Nice bright label too.
just wanted to say we've got lots and lots of options out there, and you need to bring samples in, let us identify it, diagnose it, and then we can give you all your choices.
That's great. Well, let's get to something pretty before we go to our phone calls.
I know. I wanted to kind of finish up on a little bit upbeat, and it just occurred to me, I noticed the astilbe, my own garden, started blooming, and
yeah.
I think they're prettier this year than I have ever seen them. They are just loving this cool, moist weather. So astilbe would be another fantastic plant for you or Dad. It's coming in full bloom right now. I brought a collection in right here. You can see with sort of these red flowers on it, but they're sort of reds, lavenders, pinks, whites. It's really a plant that does best in moist, partial sun, part shade. So that filtered light is coming through, taller canopy of trees. Maintain some good moisture in there. It is perennial, comes back for you every year. Nice foliage, nice range of flower colors.
You've got a white there and a purple down below. Kind of seeing under the, and as you see the number there, when we come back from this break, we're going to take your phone calls. So give us a call, 703-387-1046, and we would love to talk to you when we get back. Stay tuned.
There we go. That's the astilbe that we were talking about. That's such a fantastic plant for that woodland garden that's out there. You know, like I was saying, at least in my garden and where I've seen this garden center, I've never seen them looking better. So come down to the garden center and check that out
also. Gorgeous. So many different colors. Great. Okay, we're taking your phone call, 703-387-1046. And David, our first caller is Alex, who's calling from Great Falls. Hi, Alex.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm fantastic, thank you.
What's your question?
We just did a lot of planting in our front and backyard, and we're new to the area. We moved here from the West Coast, and the deer are decimating my plants, and I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, deer are a major headache around here. So essentially, like there's no one answer. We do have a list of deer-resistant plants. So what you'll find is, you know, they have their preferences. Some they feed on more than others. So you can get that at our website under the sort of the gardening tips and advice button. And so as you add to your landscape, you might want to look towards finding ones that they favor less, I might say. Now, your other choices start to go in fencing, but of course fencing means a minimum of 7 feet, so that doesn't work so well for a lot of people. And then what we really come down to a lot of times are the repellents. We have several really good deer repellents. Probably 2 of the most reliable ones are called Bobex or Liquid Fence. And these are sprayed directly on the plants, and they usually keep the deer away for anywhere from about 5 to 8 weeks. So as you start to identify which plants the deer are going to be a problem with, then I'm going to say you're probably going to have to be spraying with either Bobex or Liquid Fence. And if you come in the garden center, we can show you some other options for that as well.
Now, does rain, do you have to reapply after it rains, or will that stay for 5 weeks?
Yeah. Now, both of these products, you want to apply it during dry weather. Once it dries, you know, you spray it when the foliage is dry and then allow it sufficient time to dry. It will stick and adhere to the leaf and still last for several weeks.
Great. Thank you.
All right. Welcome to the area, and come down to the garden center, and we'll go through all this stuff with you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Okay, our next caller, is it Diana?
Yes, it is.
Hi, how are you? Where are you calling from?
I'm great. I'm calling from Bowie.
Bowie, great.
Yes, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
All right, well, I have a question. I have 2 inkberry shamrocks, and the first part of it is last fall I noticed these funny little kind of hard white tiny clumps kind of close to the base of the tree, and then the center of the plant died.
Right.
And you showed a funny little, like something like that earlier, and I'm wondering if that's what and you said that they go on hollies, and I'm wondering if that's what I had.
Well, what you have is a scale insect, but it's a different species of scale that we're talking about. The one that's that really hard, waxy one is called an Indian wax scale. Okay. And the cover on that is so thick and so dense that none of the insecticides will penetrate into there. So, in my opinion, your best control option is going to get what's called Tree and Shrub Protect and Feed. That's the name of the product. It's made by the Bayer Advanced group, like the Bayer aspirin people. So it's called Tree and Shrub Protect and Feed. This is either a liquid or a granule that you will need to soak into the soil around the base of the plants. It's systemically absorbed up through the roots and then kills these insects as they start feeding. The only natural controls I know that work for it are hand picking. So if you wanted to go through there, you know, it's kind of, you know, put some gloves on, because the insect is red in there and they'll actually stain you. They used to, even some people still harvest and use them as a red dye. But you can either go through and hand pick them or do this treatment with the Tree and Shrub Protect and Feed.
Okay, the second kind of goofy question is, inkberry should have berries, right?
It does, but they're black.
Yeah, but and this is the thing is, okay, how do you tell if you have male or female? Because right behind these I have 3 regular China girl hollies and a China boy, but I've never seen the berries on my inkberry, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, duh, I need something to, you know, I need a pollinator.
Right. The only way we can tell is if we actually are able to see the flowers when they're at peak bloom.
Okay.
Because otherwise, vegetatively, they look really the same on it. But on the inkberry, it's a small blackberry. You know, it's kind of attractive, but it's not really showy, and it's mostly grown as a foliage plant, so nobody really distinguishes between the boys and girls. But you can always bring us a flower sample when they're at full bloom, and that's the only time we'll be able to tell which they are.
Okay, thanks so much.
All right. Thanks for watching the show.
Have a great weekend. Okay, our next caller is Denine, is that correct?
Denine, yes.
Denine, that's an interesting name. Very nice. How are you today?
Thank you, I'm good. I'm calling from Largo, Maryland.
Great.
I love your show.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks.
My question is, I have hydrangeas, and when I brought them last year, they were this pretty pink, and this year they came back blue. And I'm wondering what I need to do to keep them blooming pink.
Yeah, you'll want to add some lime to the soil. Go ahead and start on that right now. It's going to be a little bit of a slow process that's in there. But the fact that they've turned blue tells me that you probably have pretty acidic soil conditions. So you'll gradually start almost like you could do this on a monthly basis, you know, add a little bit of lime. If these are young plants, I'm thinking like in the range of 1 or 2 cups per plant. So put 1 or 2 cups of lime around the plants, wait a month, do it again. Do this maybe 2 or 3 times, and then we'll just kind of have to watch how the flower color changes. But it will be a gradual process, but start on it right away.
Okay, do I work it into the soil or just sprinkle it on the surface?
If you can lightly scratch it in, I don't want to damage or injure the roots of the plant, which is why I'm saying just sort of lightly scratch it into the surface. So try to work it into the soil a little bit, but don't dig down, don't get too aggressive to where you actually injure the plant.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Good luck with that. I'm sure they'll be beautiful.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Okay, our next caller is Barbara, who's calling from Indian Head. How are you?
Okay, how are you?
Good.
Doing fantastic.
What's your question?
I have this weed that grows in my yard. I call it inkberry, but it's not the real inkberry bush. It has purple flower, purple berries on it. The birds love it.
Oh, is it a vine or is it?
No, it's freestanding. And it can get like 6 feet tall.
Oh yeah, I know what that is. That's called pokeweed.
Okay.
Yeah. And
how do I get rid of this stuff?
Well, that's a pretty tough one to deal with. It has this very thick, fleshy root on there. Almost,
yeah, and it goes down in the ground like 2 feet.
Yeah, exactly. And so the only way I know of to really effectively get rid of it is to have to get a shovel and dig down pretty deep to get most, if not all, of that root system that's on there. Now, if you wanted to, you know, chemically, and this is a little bit hit or miss, but you could try using the poison ivy killer. It's made by Ortho.
Right.
If you wanted to use that as a spray, but be careful so you don't harm the surrounding plants. But that pokeweed, I've found I usually have to resort to hand digging and trying to get as much of that root system out as possible once it's well established.
Yeah, I have it everywhere.
Yeah, so try the poison ivy killer, but I think you're also going to have to do some digging.
I say Roundup isn't helping much.
No, Roundup's not going to do it, but the poison ivy killer from Ortho might give you a little better results, but on these big, mature, established plants, you'll have to dig it. And I'm just going to offer a caution, not to be alarmist, but that is a poisonous plant, and every once in a while, you get kids that are attracted to berries, and then they end up, harming themselves. So I would say, you do want to try to get rid of it.
Yeah, it seems like every year more come up.
Yeah, well, get your shovel out and have a nice Father's Day weekend.
Yes,
right.
Thanks so much for your call.
Thank you.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye. We're going to take a quick break and come back with more of your questions. Well, this hour's flying by, so let's quickly get back to our phone calls, get a few more in. Wayne is calling from Calvert, Maryland. Hi, Wayne.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good morning.
Fine. How are you all?
Great.
Fantastic.
What can we do for you?
My next door neighbor has a huge weeping willow tree, and this spring it flowered, or everything came out real pretty green, and everything was nice and healthy looking. And he has a contract with a lawn company, and they came out and sprayed his lawn with some kind of stuff. And now, I don't know if this has anything to do with the weeping willow tree or not, but big, huge parts of the tree look like they're all brown, and it's not green anymore. It looks like it's under a lot of distress.
Yeah. Well, willow trees do have a lot of insect disease and structural problems with it also. So a couple things I would check out to figure out what's going on. There could be what's called a willow leaf beetle. This is a very small little black beetle, but the larvae will chew and skeletonize the leaf. So from a distance, it just turns brown. But if you get up close to it, you'll start to see where the leaf is actually being chewed away, or what we call skeletonizing, where the veins of the leaf are still there, but they chew and eat the soft part away from it. They also, on occasion, can get cankers, which is just, you'll see these black, just jet black lesions occurring on the branches and twigs, and at that point, the entire branch shrivels and dies up. So those are the first two things I would look at. It's possible that the lawn chemicals cause some damage to the tree, but I'm going to say that's less likely. I think you're probably more likely to find either this leaf beetle on there, and if that's the case, then the Captain Jack's dead bug will give you good control on that. If it's the canker, that just needs to be pruned out. If it turns out that it's none of the above and it's the lawn chemicals or applications, then it's just kind of a wait and see thing, and hopefully the plant will recover and grow back out of it.
Yeah, I've noticed that the parts that are turning brown are way up high, like 25 to 30 feet up in the air, and it's just huge parts of it are all turning on. It's mostly on the one side of it.
Yeah, weeping willows are not really long-lived trees. If this is a large tree, it might already just be going into decline. It's really unlikely that lawn chemicals would do it if it's affecting it up in the top canopy of the tree. Maybe even get some binoculars. That's what arborists do if they need to get inspections looking way up high in there. And if it is these leaf beetles and it's 25 feet in the air, I might even just ignore it, because the tree will leaf out again and it will recover.
I see.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks
Well,
so much
very
for
much.
the call.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Good luck.
Too.
Okay, let's see. Zeppelin is calling from Fort Washington. Another interesting name. How are you? Zeppelin, are you there?
Yes,
Hi.
I am.
Do you have a quick question? We're
Yes, I have
almost
a
out of
very
time.
quick and simple question. First of all, good morning, and I love your show.
Oh, thank you.
Two quick questions. I have a rose bush cutting and a doorstop hydrangea, I think it's called, that I cut a piece from my neighbor, and I'm trying to root it, and I need to know what I need to do.
Okay. With both the hydrangea and the rose, your cuttings want to be really no bigger than the diameter of a pencil. You want to get what's called a softwood cutting, where the growth is still green and succulent. Dip that into a rooting hormone, and there's several, just your choice, and then put that into, I like to use Pro Mix as the potting soil to use.
Okay.
So keep the Pro Mix damp. Keep the plants out of direct sunshine, but kind of maybe a bright but indirect light, keeping the sun off of them. And then just mist them frequently, or sometimes people will make like a little miniature greenhouse, and you can put it inside a large Ziploc bag to kind of keep the humidity up. But then you also have to watch and make sure you open to ventilate that, periodically throughout the day, so it doesn't get just too damp in there. Those are both pretty easy to root, though.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much. That was a nice, quick, and easy question.
It wasn't so easy. I just had to think fast.
Have a great weekend. Thank you all so much for joining us. We a lot of good information out there for a lot, and very healthy way to do this, and so that's great. Next week, Peggy will be here. We'll be talking about Shady Gardens Part 1. It's a two-parter we're going to be having. So we hope you have a great week and a happy Father's Day to everybody. Happy Father's Day, Dad. I love you. Bye-bye.